What is good, Counter-Strike fans? Welcome to my fourth episode of my HLTV Fantasy. Today we're going to talk about the IEM Katowice 2025 playoffs. And before we get started, just make sure to like and subscribe. Really appreciate everyone who's liked and subscribed my previous videos. Up to 7 subscribers, so I'm super excited about that, and hopefully we get to keep going for the rest of the year. Now, instead of talking about the playoff stage, we're first going to talk about the group stage, which I did quite well in. I got a top 10%. Ended up going with a Chopper, Donk, Toss, and Robs in the Apex lineup. I believe my other team that I was thinking about had Shiro instead of Donk, Techno instead of Tossin, and then Flamesy instead of Robs. That lineup, I think, performed a little bit worse than this one. I think it was definitely a top 15% lineup, so got kind of lucky with going with this one. But yeah, Donk basically carried my team just like he carried Spirit during the group stage. And I did see quite a few of these teams with these 5 players, maybe with different roles and higher booster activation percentage, who got a top 5%. So top 5% was definitely achievable, but I'll still take the top 10. Just to take a look at the best value for money players. NaVi basically dominated this. Donk only there up there for Spirit, Vitality, Flamesy and Saiwu, and then Centauri. So a lot of the heavy hitters did quite well during the group stage. And now, before we take a look at an in-depth look at the players, we're gonna take a look at the bracket and how I think it will go. And this is the bracket for the playoffs. We have Mongolz facing Inferno Fire, and then Burst Pro facing Spirit in the quarterfinals. And I think, just to get this out of the way, Spirit will destroy Burst Pro, and I think they will be able to farm them. Burst Pro are missing Flamas and have to have Mir standing in for him. But even with Flamus, Burst Pro, I wouldn't say are lucky, but definitely was the surprise team to make it to the stage. But I think, Spirit are on a different level right now. Donk should be able to dominate them, especially with the stand-in. And we saw this at Blast Bounty as well with G2 facing a Beppu team with 2 standings. I mean, it won't be as crazy as that, The 2 stand-ins was basically stomping. But I do think Spirit should take this quite easily in a 2-0 fashion. So having Spirit players is almost a must. I mean, at least having one. That one would probably be Chopper. Because they could just farm so many points against them that they could be worth it in the long run. Then it leaves the other quarterfinal, Mongolz versus Eternal Fire. Eternal Fire are the favorites, and they should be. They come into form. I mean, they beat FaZe in the lower bracket finals to make it to the playoff stage. Mongolz, even though they went 2-1, I wasn't really that impressed by them. I mean, the only teams of note that they beat were Gamer Legion, and then they got destroyed by NaVi. So I do think Eternal Fire should be able to win this, but the history between these 2 teams usually leads to very close games, and I think Mongolz, correct me if I'm wrong, Mongolz have the advantage in their previous matchups. I mean, usually the games go to 3 maps, and usually they're pretty close games, so it will be an interesting game. Eternal Fire should win, but I wouldn't be surprised for a Mongol upset. So I would have Vitality facing Eternal Fire in the semifinals and NaVi facing Spirit. NaVi versus Spirit, that should be the grand finals. I mean, that game was intense in the group stage. NaVi were able to get the win, but in reality, no one else from Spirit showed up. I mean, I think only Donk was the only one to show up, Spirit Shiro especially wasn't struggled against NaVi. Um, and it took basically NaVi like looking like their 2024 Team of the Year self to beat Spirit, and at least in a very close game. I mean, it went to 3 maps. You even had Blade basically begging Alexi to run a certain strat. So I do think Spirit come in to this. I mean, they would be the favorites still because of the, again, like the history and how often Spirit have dominated NaVi. I mean, usually when NaVi beat Spirit, Spirit would come back and beat them 2 or 3 times before NaVi even get a chance to beat them again. So I do have Spirit going through and beating NaVi, but I think this is a 50-50, and I think whoever wins this matchup probably wins IEM Katowice. But I think I have one of, I think one of Shiro, Santex, or even Magix wakes up and helps Donk and able to beat NaVi. But you never know with these matchups. My other semifinals, Vitality versus Eternal Fire. Again, Eternal Fire have won the previous match against Vitality. I mean, they even beat them earlier this year. In a not in a convincing way, but definitely in a shocking result. I wouldn't say it was shocking, but it kind of was because Eternal Fire got all the way to the finals. I think a lot of people are favoring Eternal Fire, but I just think Vitality will learn from their mistakes against Eternal Fire, and I hope that Apex is able to call a better game, because man, that phase game was crazy. It was just like, I don't know whether Apex was, the team wasn't shooting back hard enough or Apex wasn't making the right calls, but that was a crazy comeback in the final map. But I do think the experience of Vitality in stage events will help them get through and be Eternal Fire, but it will be a very close game. I wouldn't blame you if you had Eternal Fire going through, but I'm going to have NaVi going through the grand final, which will lead us to a Vitality Spirit final. And I do think Spirit will win this. I have them probably winning this in a 3-1 fashion. So, yeah, I think Spirit will win their second Katowice in a row. And so now, we can finally take a look at the playoffs and the players to pick for this event. Again, remember that NaVi and Vitality, because they skip a stage, their players will only get 6 points for the first stage, and that the finals is worth, I think, 1.5. It has a 1.5 multiplier on their points, so it definitely is worth it to go for players that make the final, and you definitely want players that make the final because that's where most of the points will come from. But enough chit chatting, let's look at the most picked players. And you can see Chopper is the most picked player. I mean, with 60%, I think 60% ownership. It's a crazy high amount, so a lot of people are gonna back Spirit. You can see even with Donk as well, he has about like 30 something percent. You have the Major and Centaurus combination as well, with Major being about 50% and Apex drops. And then you have like Mir as your chicken out candidate, and then Alexi B. So a lot of people are backing Spirit, and then also Eternal Fire. I mean, it makes sense. They have the highest upside of getting the most amount of points, and we see a little bit of ownership going towards Vitality, who, people should feel like they're the favorites in the upper stage of the playoffs, on that like upper side of the bracket. So now let's take a look at their players individually. We're gonna start off with Spirit. Let's take a look at their stats for Katowice group stage, and you can see it was just Donk carrying them at 1.45. It's insane. He's just worth his price every single event, it seems like. You had Shiro performing not that great. I mean, 1.10 is pretty poor for him, especially because he's averaging like a 1.2. Santix wasn't too far from his usual. Magic's again mediocre, and his Chopper actually performed quite well. For an IGL, and I think with this being against better opponents, and I think having that Virtus Pro matchup, you have to have at least one Spirit player. I think Chopper is basically a must-have. You need to pick Chopper. I think even if you go with a NaVi team stack, you definitely want to have at least Chopper alongside that. Because if not, the ability to farm Virtus Pro will be way too high, and it could lead to you might not even have the optimal team. You having Navi players, it might not be optimal enough, especially with such high ownership that Chopper has. So Chopper I would probably say is a must-have. And then for Spirit, I would just pick Shiro or Donk. Donk will be the hard carry, but Shiro you can at least save some money and have better players to build around it. With Donk, you kind of have to go with Mirror and kind of have a chicken out strategy. I would not be interested at all at Magic's at 204. Santix at 209. It's not the worst, but it has to be Shiro or Donk alongside Chopper. Navi. Let's take a look at Navi's stats for the group stage. And you can see all 4 players were hitting. Even Wonderful did quite well. I mean, all of them perform. I think we're seeing Navi come into great form into Katowice. Them performing actually elevated to Alexi B having a grayed out event instead of a red event where he gets like 0.93. So Navi definitely did quite well in the group stage. And I think all 5 players are in play. Remember, they only get 6 points for being in the semifinals. Bit is the most consistent. And usually the highest performer. I mean, he's been on form recently. But 219, I'd say is a little bit tad bit too high for me. Wonderful 207. I wouldn't go here either. I mean, if you want to go with Differential, but I think IEM and JO are the best prices. JO has the upside, and IEM has actually been super consistent. So I think IEM and JO are quite good. Maybe if you want to throw in Bit as well, you can. Alexi B, I don't mind at 190, but it has to be these 4, like I mentioned a lot of times before. Vitality. Let's take a look at Vitality stats for the group stage. And we can see Sai will underperform a little bit. Usually we expect at least a 1.3 rating from him. So a little bit of an underperformance from him. Flamesy got back his form and was able to perform above. I think he had like a 0.9 something rating at Blast Bounty. So great event for Flamesy so far. Robs did okay. Messi again, super consistent Messi, and his price just seems to keep going up and up. He's been the most consistent, I think, other than Saiwu for this team. Apex did okay. I mean, you usually see a red here, but he did quite well, especially because the rest of the team carry him. All 5 players are in play. Saiwu, I think, is my favorite gold at 225. I think he's the only player, again, who can match Donk. So if you're not going with Donk, Saiwu could be an interesting option. Just hope that he is able to farm just enough against Eternal Fire, and he has a great grand finals. I mean, usually at least gonna give you a positive rating, so that's a certain for him. Messi, I like a 205. Super consistent. Tougher matchups means he has more opportunity to frag out. And between Flamesy and Robs, I'll probably lean towards Robs, just cheaper. Flamesy, I do want to see a little bit more consistency from, but he definitely performed really good in the group stage, so I wouldn't mind going with him. And if you wanted to go double Vitality, Apex is a solid option. if you don't have enough money, or if you want to go that Apex Saibu route. Eternal Fire. Let's take a look at Eternal Fire's group stage statistics, and we can see Centaurus. Centaurus performed really good, 1.26 rating. Woxic again, keeping up that form from Blast Bounty, did quite well as well. Jota finally outperformed Wicadia. Not by a lot, but definitely a little bit of a performance. Wicadia did okay, and Major did okay as well. For Eternal Fire, a lot of good options. Major 180, only being 5k more expensive than our usual chicken out option, which is the cheapest player. It's interesting, especially because he could do quite well in that first game, get a win, get a good roll boost, and then hopefully get a booster to trigger. So he could give you points. I think he might be a better option than just picking Mirror just to chicken out in the first match. So Major, I don't mind. He's really good actually at that price. I also like Wicadia at 196. We saw Wicadia being higher than Woxic, close to Centaurus in price a couple events ago. So seeing him be less than Jota is quite an interesting turn of events. I do think maybe they messed up the pricing here. Maybe Jota was supposed to be 196 and Wicadia was supposed to be 201. But I don't mind. I think Wicadia is a great option here if you want to go double Eternal Fire. Jota, I wouldn't go there at 201. I think he still needs a little bit more time to get used to that. He had great group stage, but it's not the time for him. Woxit is solid, but I'm again afraid of him performing on stage. And just Centaurus. I think if you go Eternal Fire, you have to have Centaurus. If anyone's gonna carry them to the grand finals, it will be him. Now on to Mongolz. I'm not gonna take a look at their statistics because they have a map against NaVi where they basically got blown out and that kind of tanked their ratings. But I wouldn't go here. But if you wanted to go with a Mongolz play, I would say Messinho and 910 are your best options. Great rolls, and they've been the most consistent options for their team. Sensu's kind of been shown to be a little bit inconsistent, especially against better opponents. Against worse opponents, he's definitely their best player, but when it comes to tough repetition, he just doesn't perform. And yeah, just go Messinho 910. If you want to go Mongolz, maybe Techno at 184, but I think that'd be a little too far. He doesn't really perform that well, honestly. And then for Burgess Bro, would not touch. If you wanted the chicken out option to save a little bit extra 5k instead of Major, go with Mirror. But I haven't really built a lot of Mirror lineups. If you have Donk, you definitely have to have Mirror. I think, but I think Burgess Pro, there's no chance they beat Spirit. And if they do, there's even less of a chance that they get to the grand finals. So don't go here. For this event, you definitely want to stack 2 of Spirit or NaVi. So you have to pick between Spirit and NaVi, and then between Vitality and Eternal Fire. The most common lineup will probably be something like Chopper, Donk, Mir, Centaurus, and Major. You do leave a little bit of extra money in the bank, but I think this is probably the most common lineup right now. And it makes sense. You have the highest upside with Eternal Fire and Spirit having the most amount of games possible to get to the finals. So it does make sense, but that's a place where I'm interested on. If you wanted to go again, Spirit, and I believe, can we go something like Mir, and then you can go Centaurus with Cadia? And then go something like, I don't know actually. If you believe in like going a little bit more into Eternal Fire with Jota, you could do that instead of Major. Would that be worth it? I'm not sure. So that would probably be some lineups for Spirit Eternal Fire. I think the common anti-strat would be going with NaVi and then going with Eternal Fire. That'd be a good balance of differential and possible upside. If you want to go a little bit more safe, Spirit and Vitality would be the safe option. But let me just show you real quick a NaVi Eternal Fire lineup. I think something like this would be interesting. I think you have, Chopper, who should farm that Virtus Pro game, and then if you have them losing against NaVi, you should have enough points from Virtus Pro to be kind of optimal. Then you have the two NaVi guys that should make it. If you think the NaVi make it to the grand finals, would be able to, perform in the grand finals, and then Eternal Fire have the highest upside in the upper bracket to go and get the most amount of points, and you have Centaurus and Major. So this is an interesting lineup. A little bit, I would say, differential enough that I'm interested on. But I'm gonna show you the current lineup that I'm on, which is this lineup. It has 2 Spirit players and 2 Vitality players. It's Chopper, Shiro, side with Apex alongside with Major. Again, I don't really find the savings that I need with changing Major and Mirror, so I just decided to go with Major here. And I kind of have the best of both worlds. I mean, I have the upside of Spirit, and I have, if Vitality make it to the grand finals, I have Saiwu as well, who can be a carry during that game. So I have 2 carries. If they were to face in the grand finals, should both do well in there. This lineup is not the upside lineup that is Spirit and Eternal Fire, but this is the lineup of players I think have the highest probability of making that grand final, or having a probability of getting the most amount of points. With Major, just hope that he has a positive rating against Mongolz, and he has more than enough points to be worth it over Mirror especially. And then you could think about checking him out against Vitality. If you don't check him out against Vitality, maybe if Apex goes through against Spirit, maybe you could check him out. Or even if somehow Eternal Fire beat Vitality and have to face Spirit or NaVi, you can check it out Major in that grand final as well. But yeah, this is gonna be my lineup. Probably my lineup, if not the other one I showed with Chopper, Ime, Wonderful, and I believe it was Centaurus and Major could be another option. If I want to go a little bit more differential, I could go with those, but for now this will be my lineup, and I think 90% locked in. The only other options I could do is maybe go, I believe it was no, not Flamesy, I believe it was Robs and Messi, which will give me a I guess less hard carry with Saiwu, and would be able to spread a little bit more of the opportunity of these two performing good. But for now, I think this is the lineup I will go with. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, what your lineup looks like, and anything else that you wanted to say. Hope to have a great event. Hopefully we see a Spirit NaVi great game, and then hopefully we see Spirit and Vitality in the finals in order for my lineup to do really well. Other than that, good luck and see you later.